This week, we're going further into the look development of modeling. Last week, we learned a bit about UV mapping and the basics of texturing. Now, this week, we'll be focusing on materials, lighting, and rendering. For this module, we'll be doing two smaller projects. The first part, the one you are currently watching, is about how to apply materials, while part two will be on how you can light and render your scene. So let's get started. For part one, we're going to be texturing this model of an axe. We'll be using texture maps that make up the components of a material and using an AI standard surface shader to apply it. Now, you just heard me say a lot of words that all sound like they could mean the same thing: texture, material, and shader. Let me bring my images back up here. Let me differentiate them a bit so that you can understand how they are similar but not the same, and how they must work together to texture our model. I do have a short Canvas page on this where I talk further and provide a video to watch. So go take a look, watch that entire video, and then come back once you've done that. All right. In simplest terms, materials are made from shaders, and shaders are made of textures. A texture is an image which can be used to affect a particular aspect of a material, like its color or what parts of it is metallic, wooden, shadowed, etc. We use the name texture map when talking about textures because there are a variety of maps that can be used in one material. A texture map can be the base color, the normal map, the specular or metalness, the height map, etc. Now, a shader is what does all of the heavy lifting in a material, combining the textures and other inputted data to produce a specific effect. This dictates how the material will behave. Is it glass? Is it metal? Is it hair? Now, a material is a collection of nodes that dictate how a surface should look. It is a compilation of many textures. You have a base color of wood, a normal map of wood, a height map of wood. All combined together, you have a wood material. So think of a texture as an image file, a shader as a set of instructions for producing effects with the textures, and a material as the container that holds them. Now, let's get into project 4, part 1. All right, now with this model, I want to be able to texture each part of it. I want it to look a little bit like a Viking axe, for an example, like this one, where I have a metal material and a wooden material. But with the model that I do have, it does have this base that I could put fabric around too to make a good grip for whoever is wielding this axe. So I'm going to need 3 materials for this model. Now, if we take a look, this axe has already been fully UV mapped. So we have, let's see here. So we have the wooden base, we have the handle where we'll put the fabric, and we have the axe head, and some of this is the support for the metal axe head, and this is the back of the metal axe head. So we have this entire model completely UV wrapped, and now we're ready for texturing. So I have already downloaded my PBR materials. And I can show you, I did get them from this handy little website right here called Ambient CG for some free materials. Now, free materials, they're not hard to find. I do have in Canvas some resources right here where I list some websites that you can find some free materials. But it's really easy to find websites where you can download free materials. So I have downloaded for my model a metal material, a fabric material, and a wooden material. So in that download, I will have gotten, let's see here, all of the different texture maps that I need for each one of these materials. I have a color map for my fabric, a normal map for my fabric, a roughness map for my fabric. For my metal, I have a color map, a normal map, and a roughness as well. But because it is a metal, I do also have a metalness map, which is similar to the specular or metallic map. And then for my wood, I do have a color map as well, a normal map, and a roughness map. Now, these are the basics of the texture maps that you can use in a material. You can actually use about 7 or 8 different types of texture maps, depending on how detailed you want your model to be. In this case, we're going to keep it really basic. We just want to use the basics of a color, a normal, and a roughness. Now, the color, also called the albedo, is the base color input that defines the color and reflectivity of the surface of the model. The normal, also called the bump map, applies the surface details like bumps, grooves, and scratches without actually changing or adding the geometry of our model. And the roughness controls how shiny or rough a surface appears by modulating the way light scatters off of it. And the metalness or the metallic defines how metallic a surface appears. So I have all of my texture maps here, and I'm going to use them inside of one shader to create a material for each part of my model here. My axe head, my axe base, and the fabric handle. So you will be provided the materials that I did just show you. I am going to include them in a folder along with the axe model that you can download. And you can feel free to either use those materials that I give you, or you can download your own PBR materials from some free website and apply all the texture maps yourself. That's completely up to you. But I am going to give you the model and all of the texture maps that I will be using for this project. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, I do have my model UV mapped, so we can jump straight into Hypershade. Now, Hypershade is this little blue icon right here. Let me bring this up. And this is Maya's shading network. So this is how you create materials, how you put together materials and texture your model. So you will have already been familiar with this from the UV mapping a stool project, but now we're going to go a little bit further into how you put all your texture maps together to texture or to make one material and then texture your model. So let's do the axe head first. Now, we are going to create a shader with very limited information in it. Now, all the shaders are over here. Maya supplies some really interesting ones. We have a hair tube shader, ocean shader, fog, light, cloth, grid. There's a lot of different water, cloud. There's a lot of different shaders that Maya comes equipped with, which can be really useful. But we want to use the material that we found online. So we are going to take a fairly basic shader and we're going to change it with all the texture maps we're going to load up into it. So you're going to go to Arnold and you are going to go down to, let's see, AI Standard Surface. Now, AI Standard Surface is the most basic shader that you can use. It is just a simple shader that you can change the color on. So if I actually, if I come to my AI Standard Surface right here and where you see color, I could change the color on it like so. And if I wanted to, I could select a part of my model, assign material to selection, and now my model has this nice color to it. So you can do some very basic things with it, like changing the color or the metalness. But we're going to change it a lot more than that by using texture maps and creating a material. So I am going to delete this. So when you see that you've applied a material and then delete the material, it turns your model green. Don't worry about that. It's just saying, hey, I'm missing my material that you assigned me. So let's go back. Let's put down another AI standard surface. And let's do the color first because that is the base of our material. So at the color here, I am going to go to my checker box. I'm going to bring up my render node and I'm going to upload a file. So with Hypershade, you have a couple of options here. You can either, let's see here if I can show you. You can either work with the attribute editor where you can do your shaders right here, or you can do it just in the Hypershade window using the nodes where you make connections between nodes with these little branches. And I much prefer to do it with the nodes than to do it with the attribute editor. So let's do this in Hypershade. Now, I just put down my AI standard surface. I don't have any of my texture maps loaded up into it. I did give myself the ability to load a file into the color. So I'm going to rename this from file 1 to metal color. And now where you see image name, let's upload that color. So it is going to be the metal. We're going to look for my metal texture map color. So right here, metal color. Let's open that up. All right, so there is our first texture map that we have connected to this standard AI standard surface. Let's now do the roughness map, which if you remember, the roughness is what gives it, which is what simulates bumps and scratches and a little bit of depth by faking some detail. So let's select the AI standard surface again. I'm going to rename this to metal material. And let's go down to the roughness right here underneath specular. So specular roughness. And let's click this little checker box right here. All right, we're going to upload a file. Let's make sure that that file is selected. I'm going to name this one metal roughness. And then let's upload that file right here. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to look for the one that says metal roughness right here. Let's put that in. All right, so with the roughness, we do need to make some changes to make it look good. All you really need to do, let's see, is right here, where you see it says color space underneath the file attributes of the metal roughness. We're going to change it from RGB to utility raw. After we've done that, we're going to come down to color balance and we're going to check on alpha is luminous. This is just going to make it a little bit better and less crazy. I would show you an example of that, but for the sake of time, let's just keep going. So we've connected our color map. We've connected our roughness map. Now let's connect our normal map. So let's select our material here. We can close the specular because we've already done the roughness. We can close the base because we've already done the color. Let's go down to geometry right here. And where you see it says bump mapping, we're going to do it right here. So let's open up file. Let's come, you're going to see that it takes you to bump map or bump 2D1, which is just the attributes. So come back to where the file is right here. It's going to say file 1. Let's rename this metal normal. So don't get confused. A normal map is the same as a bump map. So you're going to see those two different words being used for the map in different places. So right here, we can upload our bump map, our normal map. So let's scroll down where all of my metals are to metal right here, normal. Let's load that up. Now with this one, we are going to change some things as well. Let's see here. I'm going to come back to the attributes right here. And where you see it says use as bump, let's change that to tangent space normals. We are also going to come back to the map right here, the file, and we are going to change it from RGB to raw. And we're going to make sure that alpha is luminance is toggled on as well. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Oh, I see where I made. No, okay. I thought I made a mistake. No, doesn't. Turns out I did everything well. Okay. So now we have, and you can see you can actually move these nodes around as well. So if you want to just organize, that's really helpful. Okay. So we have texture 1, our color map, which is connected to base color right here. Texture 2, which is our metal roughness, which is connected to our specular roughness. And then texture 3, which is our normal map, also known as a bump map, connected to normal. Now, the last thing we need to do, or I'm sorry, the last texture map we need to add to this material is the metalness map, because this is a metal. So we're going to come back to base, and you're going to see it says metalness right here. We can upload the metalness file here. So you're going to see it put down 2 new nodes. File 1, we're going to rename that to metal. Let's see, metal. I guess we could just name it metal, because it'd be funny to name it metal for metal map. And then image name right here, let's upload the metalness map right here, metalness. Let's open that up. Now we do need to make some changes to this one as well. We need to change the RGB to raw, and we need to make sure that alpha is luminance is turned on. Okay, so we have our texture maps connected. We have our metal or our color map. We have our roughness map. We have our normal map, and we have our metalness map. So that means our texture has been, our basic shader that we brought in has been assigned 4 different texture maps and is now a full material that we can apply to our model. So I'm going to select all the portions of the model that is going to be metal. I'm going to come up here to our materials tab, and where it says metal material, I'm going to right click, hold, and do assign material to selection. So now remember, you can't see it. Let me drop this down because I don't have my textures, my shaded turned on. So I'm going to come up here where it says textured. When I click that, there we go. So you can see our metal material is now applied. So if I open up Arnold and open up the render view, I will be able to see my model once I put down some lights. So I'm going to move this to the side. Actually, let me dock this right here. Like so. And let's put down some lights, because if I try to render it now, it's not going to want to. Make sure that this is open. There we go. So let's come up and let's put some lights down. I think I'm going to do a directional light. And we are going to get into lights in part 2 of this project. So don't worry if you're a little confused about lights. It'll make sense once you have done part 2. Okay, so now I have a directional light shining right down on my axe right here. I'm also going to go to Arnold's, and I'm going to put down a sky dome light. Okay, so now if I push play on my render view, there's my model, and you can see my texture now applied, where I have my scratches and my bumps and my details, and you can see that it is shiny. You have light reflecting off of it. That looks good. Okay, I'm going to stop my render. Let's go back to Hypershade. All right. Oops. Accidentally docked that. Let me drag that back out. Here we go. All right, let's clear our space right here, and let's start on our next material. So this little handy guy right here says clear graph. This is how you just wipe your entire workspace clear. There we go. So it didn't delete my material. My material is still here, but it did clear out my workspace. So I am going to close Arnold Render View really quickly. And let's put down another AI standard surface shader, which is going to be underneath Arnold. And it is right here. Okay. So I put down another basic AI standard surface shader. Let's apply the texture maps and let's make our wood material. So very similarly, we're going to come to base. We're going to come to the color right here and let's upload that file. Okay, so now I have the ability to load it up right here. So let's rename this wood color. And where it says image name, let's upload our file. So let's go down to the wood and wood color right here. Let's open that up. We don't need to make any changes to the color. That looks fine. Let's come back to our standard surface shader and really quickly, let's rename this to wood material. And we did the base, the color map. We don't need to do a metalness map because wood is not going to be reflective. So we can close this tab. Let's take a look at the specular. And we are going to upload a roughness map because a roughness is what determines how shiny or rough a surface appears by modulating the way light scatters off of it. I think I did mix it up earlier when I said it was the bumps and the scratches and the details. That is not the case. The roughness map is how shiny or rough a surface is, whereas the normal map determines what types of bumps and scratches and details there are. All right, so right here at the roughness underneath specular, take note, there is a diffuse roughness option underneath the base tab. It's not this one. It is the roughness under the specular tab. So I am going to upload a file. We have our empty file right here. I'm going to rename this wood roughness. And let's upload that file. See here, wood roughness. Let's load that up. And same as before, the RGB should be turned to raw. And alpha is luminous should be toggled on. Okay, so we have our color map and our roughness map. Now, because we're going pretty simple, all we're going to load up now is a normal map. So let's go down to the geometry tab. Let's do bump mapping right here. File. All right, where it says, right here, let's make sure we have the file selected. I'm going to rename this to wood normal. Let's upload it right here. And wood normal map. Let's open that up. All right, with the normal map, some things that we need to make changes to. Let's go to the bump to D2 right here. Let's change it from use as bump to tangent space normals. Let's go back to the normal map and let's change it from an RGB to a raw. And alpha is luminance, should be toggled on. All right, so in this case, we just have the 1, 2, 3 texture maps plugged into our shader. And we've now created our wood material, a very simple wood material. So what are we going to do? We're going to come to our model here. We're going to select the wood base right here. And I'm going to assign material to selection. All right. There we go. So we have our wood material applied. You can see there's some roughness to it, some detail work. Now, I don't like that the grain of the wood is going horizontally. I feel like that's pretty unnatural for a wooden cylinder like this. I feel like the grain should be going vertical up and down. So let's actually rotate that. Let's come back to the wood material here. I'm sorry, the color map here. And let's rotate it. So actually not the color map. Let's go to the texture right here. And you can see it says second texture placement attributes. Right here, we have the rotate UV. So if we slowly scale this, you'll see that it's rotating the way the map has been applied. So I think I want it like that. That looks much better. So you can rotate all day long, however much you want. All right, so there is our wooden material, our wood material, and that one's been applied. Let's check out what it looks like being rendered. So I'm going to go to Arnold, open Arnold render view. Oh, I forgot that I had it right over here. Come on, there we go. And let's push play on this. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit on my axe right here. Let's run the renderer. And it doesn't want to, doesn't want to register. There we go. All right. Looks good. So now our wood has been applied to the base of our axe. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I don't know if this is the base or the handle. All I know is this is where the grip is going to be, but the actual physical, this portion of it, is it the base? Is it the handle? I'm not so sure. I'm just going to keep calling it the base. So we have our wood and we have our metal applied and they look great. Now let's do the fabric grip right here. So I'm going to stop the renderer. I'm going to close my render view or collapse it. And let's bring up Hypershade again. We don't need to bring it up that much. Let's make sure that the model is in view. And let's clear our space by hitting the clear graph button right here. Now, if you want to bring back the node graph or the node tree for the materials, all you need to do is you can either click one of them, and it's going to be this one right here, and it's just going to show you all the nodes once again. So you never actually lose track of your node trees. All right, so let's put down another AI standard surface. And this one should be fairly simple too. We're also just going to plug in 3 different texture maps, that being the color map, the roughness map, and the normal map. So this should be pretty easy for you now. Let's go to color, file. Let's rename this fabric color. Let's upload the file and fabric color right here. I'm going to come back to the shader right here. I'm going to rename this fabric material. And let's close this, open up Specular to load up the roughness map. File. Let's rename this fabric roughness. Image name. Let's load that up. Fabric roughness. Let's change the RGB to raw. Alpha is luminance turned on. Okay, now lastly, the normal map. So let me close the specular tab and go down to the geometry tab, bump mapping, file. Let's rename this fabric normal. Let's upload our file. fabric normal map right there. And let's come back to the attribute node right here, and let's change some of the attributes. Let's change it from use as bump to tangent space normals. Let's go back to the texture node. Let's make sure it's not RGB, but raw. And let's make sure that alpha is luminance is turned on. Okay, so there's our 3 textures, our color map, our roughness map, and our normal map. And we have our fabric material all set up here. So I'm going to just select this handle. I'm going to right click, assign material to selection. All right, let's drop down Hypershade. There we go. Our model has been textured. Let's check it out in the render view. Let me make sure that's completely in view. Okay, looks good. So we have our little details, some grooves and nicks and scratches. We have a shine. Oops, we have a shine to our metal. You can't see it very well because we don't have an environment around it where we have really strong light reflecting off of it. But everything looks good. So the last thing you're going to do is you are just going to save this file. I'm actually going to have you make a snapshot of your renderer right here. So all you need to do is you need to throw down a Skydome light right here and a directional light. So you have Skydome light underneath Arnold right here, and underneath a rendering right here, we have a directional light, and you just need to point your directional light at your model. So that's how you light up your scene in a very basic way. And then you can go to Arnold, open render view, which is this guy right here. And once you hit this play button, you're going to be rendering out the final image of your model. And all you need to do is go to File, Save Image. And you can name it Axe Textured. And now let's take a look at that. All right, inside of my project folder, we're going to go to Images. And here is going to be that image that we rendered out. So that's going to be inside of your Images folder. And when you are first starting your project, all of your texture maps go into your source images folder. So I'm going to be sending you all of these source images. You're going to be able to download those and then texture your model. So you just learned how to texture your models in Maya for part 1 of our projects for this module. Part 2 is going to be lighting and rendering, and that's going to be a really fun one. So look forward to that.